Matthew here from MiniWargaming.com, bringing you another Beat Matt Bat Rep.
We work so you can play. Mini Wargaming's Beat Matt Bat Rep.
This is going to be another Necrons vs. Imperial Guard battle report, just like the last one, except it won't be just like the last one because we have another player and a slightly different list. And this time we're going to be playing 1,850 points. The challenger today is Matthew. He came all the way from Ottawa, the capital of Canada, just for all of you who are not Canadians, or for those of you who are Canadians and just didn't really listen in geography. Ottawa is the capital of Canada, which is why he brought his Imperial Guard Canadians. And no, I did not say that wrong. As you will see in just a moment, he actually brought Imperial Guard Canadians. So we're pretty excited for this.
Oh yeah.
Long drive.
Very.
So you're nice and tired, so I can take advantage of that and hopefully win a lot easier. So let's take a look at the armies as well as the scenario. We're going to start by taking a look at Matthew's Imperial Guard Canadians, and no, that is not pronounced wrong, and you'll see why. He actually painted these with Canadian flags on them. So this is his Imperial Guard army, and it's quite well painted actually. This is the main command squad, and there's an astropath and whatever the sergeant is, and we've got a I think that's an autocannon, or that's a last cannon. And then we've got another little command squad with a last cannon. You can see the Canadian flags painted on their left lapels. And he hand-painted every single one of those. Then we have two regular Canadian squads, one with a heavy bolter, and the other one, this is one with a heavy bolter, the other one had a last cannon. So he has those on foot just to provide some extra heavy, or some fire support. He's got two heavy weapon platoons. You can see that once again, the detail he's added to the painting. And these are two groups of 3 last cannons to provide some additional fire support. And he's got 2 chimeras with veterans, and there's 3 meltas in that squad and 3 meltas in this squad as well. So you can see that he's pretty ready to kill swarms and any vehicles I would happen to bring. Then he also brought 3 sentinels, all with plasma cannons. This is going to be 1 squadron of sentinels. 2 Lehman Russ battle tanks. So those are the battle cannon and 2 heavy plasma cannons. And this is proxying in for a Medusa. The Medusa basically has an artillery shot, strength 10, AP1 or AP2. And then these are Vendettas. Basically, they're not transports. They can fire 3 twin-linked last cannons instead. So those will be good for additional fire support. So all around a very interestingly balanced army with lots of firepower. Now we're going to see my Necrons. I had to put MWG Matthews just to specify which Matthew was which. And here is my 1,850 point army of Necrons. Now once again, I knew I was playing against Imperial Guard, and so I didn't want to bring the vehicles just like last time. I did bring the 1 command barge just so I could fly up and maybe pop one of his vehicles before it got destroyed and get my Overlord up there in close combat as soon as I can. And then what we have here is we have 2 groups of Necron warriors. One is 15 and one is 16, each with the Lord with Resurrection Orb. We also have 2 Cryptechs in the army. They're both Harbinger of Destructions with Solar Pulses to give them 2 rounds of night fighting. The reason I could bring 2 is because I have 2 Overlords. We've got 3 groups of Scarab Swarms, 2 groups of 4 and 1 group of 5. Then we have a group of Immortals here, 10 Immortals and a Necron Lord. All the Necron Lords have War Size. And a group of Lich Guard with Dispersion Shields and Hyperphase Swords, and a Necron Overlord with War Scythe Resurrection Orb, and a Necron Lord with a War Scythe and no Resurrection Orb. That's the only one with that one, as you don't need to have 2 Resurrection Orbs in the same group. The Overlord will be the one to die after the Lord, usually anyways. We rolled off for scenarios, and once again it's going to be the capture and control, or not capture and control, seize ground, whichever one of that. You get D3 plus 2 objectives, and we rolled and we got 5 objectives again. He got to place first, and we knew beforehand which side of the table we were going to be deploying on, so he put 3 of the objectives on his side and 2 on my side, and that way it forced me to come across the table to his fire line. We then rolled off, and he gets first turn unless I steal the initiative. And now what he's going to be doing here with his deployment is he's putting all his tanks, all his vehicles along the back line. And that's, if you're an Imperial Guard player, then take note here, because his strategy was actually pretty sound throughout the entire game. And he has, you can see the Medusa right in the back there. His heavy gun emplacements, or his heavy platoon emplacements, he put more towards the front to be able to have better line of sight, and also to be kind of the first thing that gets hit when I come charging across. The 2 battle tanks, the 2 Lehman Russes, are right there, flanking the Medusa. And then his Sentinels he has out front, because the Sentinels, because they're a squadron of vehicles, or a squadron of walkers, in fact, they can be pretty tough to take down because squadrons of walkers have the advantage of pretty much being fearless in close combat, but not taking extra wounds if they lose combat, because basically they just ignore it. And so in order to kill them, you have to kill them. Now, being a squadron, an immobilized will destroy one, but still, as you'll see in the game, that worked out to be a good benefit to him. And then he's loading up the one building in the back there with 2 platoons, or 2 squads of guys, to provide the fire support and also to hold that objective. And then he has another squad right here out front to provide some extra fire support. With my deployment, it was tricky. I actually, now that I look back, I would have done a little different, but it still seemed to work out okay in the end. I wanted the scarab swarms up as far as I could get them because they needed to get across, but then I kind of noticed something, and that is that there's no cover in the middle of the board. And I'm the one that set up the terrain, and I completely forgot to put any cover in the middle of the board. And so somehow I'm going to have to advance across the board under a punishing fire of Imperial Guard mechanized, basically. Not fully mechanized, but enough. And somehow survive to get across. And the scarab swarms, if just half of them can get across, then I'll be able to do really well. And so you can see I'm going to be adjusting my deployment a few times here as I realize what I need to do. In hindsight, what I needed to do was keep my warriors back, because all I'm going to be doing with them is moving them up to hold the 2 objectives, and the rest of the army is going to move forward. And yet I tried to put the warriors forward as well, thinking that I was going to try to move them up so they could provide fire support. And then the command barge, of course, I hide in the one building, so if he does fire at it, it does get at least cover, which will make it a much more difficult target. So what I end up doing here is rearranging it so my Lich Guard with dispersion shields, which gives them a 4+ invulnerable, are going to be just out in the open on the right flank, and they're going to move forward and provide mobile cover to the rest of the army behind them. And the reason I can call them mobile cover is because no matter what, they're going to get a 4+ invulnerable, and so they can hide guys behind them to give them cover saves. Tried to steal initiative there and did not, and so Imperial Guard do indeed get the first turn. Moves the Chimera over to give room for the Sentinels to reposition themselves. He obviously is not going to be advancing towards me very much because he wants to get as many rounds of shooting as possible. However, this first shooting phase, he is going to have night fighting as I do shoot one of my solar pulses. And so what you're going to see here when we go to do the shooting is we don't actually show all the rolls for night fighting, but if you do see somebody firing, then you know that they made their roll. And so very few things manage to fire in the first turn. In fact, I nullify probably 90% of his shooting because of the night fighting. Even though he has searchlights on a lot of his vehicles, none of those vehicles with searchlights managed to see what they're shooting at, and so they weren't able to light it up for everybody else. But we do have, I think, 3 of the last cannon emplacements were able to fire in total. And he did manage to kill 2 of the scarab swarms. I failed both my 3+ cover saves. And then the Master of Ordnance is firing his barrage weapon, so even though he couldn't see it, he still gets to shoot it. But it does scatter, but it only scatters 4 inches, luckily off of the Scarab Swarms, but does kill 5 warriors. So 1 Lich Guard goes down, 2 Scarab Swarm bases, and 5 warriors. Then we roll to see if they run away. They do not. And how many of the 5 come back? We have 3 of them come back. So that's a total of 39 points so far with our new counter right there, or the, not new, but old counter. And the Lich Guard does not come back. So that is actually a pretty heavy loss right there. That's a 45-point model that did not come back. But I can't complain because when you look at all the damage that he was able to do, he didn't really do hardly anything. And that's with a lot of potential shooting. So now comes a difficult job of moving my guys forward in such a way that I provide the most vital parts cover, and then be able, so I can stand up against another round of shooting, even though he's going to have night fighting again because I did bring 2 solar pulses. And so the warriors moved up, and this is where I should have moved the warriors to the right. I made a mistake, just moved them forward. I do correct that mistake later on. Luckily, he doesn't exploit it too much because he's focused on the real problem, which is the Lich Guard and also the Scarab Swarms. The command barge does manage to move a little past the Chimera, so I guess it's 3 hits on it. Only hits once on a 4+, and then manages to penetrate, but only rolls a 2 on the table, so it is stunned. But it will get a cover save the next turn. I think I remember to use the cover save when it gets shot at, but we'll see. Scarab Swarms then run. Everybody's running at this point. The Scarab Swarms run into the building, and the one Cryptek does fire. He does hit the Medusa with a Strength 8 weapon, but fails to penetrate or even glance. The Lich Guard then run. They get a nice healthy 5 or 6. I can't remember which it is. And so they start to spread out, and this is where we start to provide as much cover as possible. Then the Immortals move up, and then the way that they're going to move is they're going to hide half of their numbers behind the Lich Guard, so they get cover. And this gives us a nice line for the Scarab Swarms to go into, and I'm trying to spread out everything as much as possible because he has a lot of blasts. So the Scarab Swarms should all have cover, as long as I don't lose too many of the troops out front. So end of round 1, night fighting really nullified his shooting, which is really nice for that first turn. Then I was able to move up. I had no casualties on his part except for a stunned vehicle on the Chimera. And everybody else moving up in such a pattern as to provide each other cover as much as possible. The warriors hunkering down inside this building. There's a couple Scarab Swarms in there, but it'll be hard for them to take anything out in there because they'll all be getting healthy cover saves. And so that's the end of round 1. Stay tuned for round 2. Can the Imperial Guard do enough damage in their shooting phase? You will find out. Click on the annotation if you're on YouTube, or click the link below if you're on Mini Wargaming. And don't forget to subscribe.